free here. I am under some direction. I agree with you that we should speak all night if possible, but I will try and manage the debate within our time and ask you to respect it. So let us go immediately to the leader of the group of Socialists and Democrats, Madam Garcia Perez, for 3 minutes, Madam. Thank you.
Thank you, President. Today is a very sad day for Europe. At the end of this week, after 47 years, the United Kingdom will end its historic relationship with the European Union. We are devastated to see the UK go. Respetamos la decisión.
We respect the decision of the British people, but their sovereignty doesn't prevent us from pointing a finger to those who started a campaign, a populist campaign, and the United Kingdom was devastated through its peculiar civil war with the right, and it started the era of fake news and a disenchantment of the people after years of austerity. The European Union is more than a market, and we need to continue moving forwards. We're building an area of rights, of security and of social progress, and many British citizens, especially the Labour Party's members and voters, have sacrificed their life, especially Jo Cox, who was assassinated. So we need to honour her memory, and we need to work day after day for a Europe that died defending. Populism has obtained a victory with its best weapon, lies. But let us remember that this is a Pyrrhic victory, and the best example of this is the withdrawal agreement, which we are about to approve. Our historic ties will prevail on those over and above those who want to destroy them. The withdrawal agreement actually guarantees the rights of European citizens in the United Kingdom and the rights of British citizens in the European Union. And it also avoids the building of a border between Northern Ireland and the Republic of Ireland, because the two countries belong to the European Union, and this has had a crucial effect, turning this border that separated Northern Ireland from the Republic of Ireland, insignificant, and it reduced the virulence of the conflict. And another victory was the negotiation on our new future relation. In February, the United Kingdom formally will be a third country, and it will lose all its political rights. But in everything else, nothing will change until the transitional period ends.
And that of the European Union is one. We also share our laws and values. If the British people ever decide to come back, our arms will be open. You can always count on the support of the Social Democrats, because our common values will always remain.
Thank you. Thank you so much, Madam, for particularly your timekeeping. I now give the floor to Madam Loiseau for 1.5 minutes for the Renew Europe group.
For once, I will make an exception. Today is an exceptional moment, and I will speak in English because I want to speak to our British friends. To all of you, I will say that we will miss you. The EU will not be the same without you. My deep feeling is that there is no good Brexit. Even if I support the withdrawal agreement, I am still convinced that we are better off together than we will be apart from another. To our Lib Dem colleagues, I want to express my deep friendship, emotion and admiration. They fought for Europe against all odds. They were a tremendous added value to the work of this Parliament, and they remain part of the Renew Europe family. To the British citizens living in the EU, to the European citizens living in the UK, I want to assure them, we won't let you down. This Parliament is the voice of the citizens, and we will make sure that citizens' rights are fully respected. To the Brexiteers, I could say no hard feelings. You have achieved your objective. You enter a new phase, the most difficult one. We will have no one to blame for the future of your country, especially not Brussels. You are in charge. But trust me, if some of you think that the next phase is the weakening of the EU, we will prove you dead wrong. We will renew Europe, make it better, make it stronger, learn the lessons from Brexit. Brexit is a sad and exceptional moment and will remain both.
Thank you. Please, Monsieur Lambert for the Greens European Free Alliance Group. You have 2.5 minutes, sir.
Thank you. Dear colleagues, for some, January 31st will be a happy day. For us Greens and European Free Alliance members, it will be a sad day. It's no secret that each and every one of us fought relentlessly to keep the United Kingdom as part of the European Union. Not because we think that whatever the European Union does is the right thing, but because we firmly believe that the only way for Europeans to regain sovereignty, that is the ability to shape our future, is by sharing it. And as Jean-Claude Juncker said, Jean-Claude Juncker once said, well, there's two sorts of European states, the small ones and those who don't yet realise they are small. But more importantly, we see the European Union as an unprecedented, if fragile, attempt at building a transnational democracy. Such an experiment may come in handy at a time when not just Europe but the entire world is facing challenges beyond the might of any single nation. The citizens, we fought the battle and we lost. Last December's election provided a result, but not the one we wished. 2 days from now, Brexit will happen, and in order for it to be orderly, we will vote the withdrawal agreement. The United Kingdom and the EU remain bound by geography. It is in no one's interest to have bad relations as neighbours. But more fundamentally, we European decision makers must realise that if an increasing number of our fellow citizens have turned their backs against the European projects, it's for a reason. It's because many believe that for too often, policies adopted at European level have served the interests of the few rather than of the many. And we need to fix this. We need to fix this if we want really to avoid the repetition of the Brexit happening. Let us make it our utmost priority that from now on, our compass will be that all our policies will strive to serve the interests of everyone, starting with the most vulnerable, and do this while respecting the limits that nature imposes on us. The European Green Deal announced by the European Commission is an opportunity to take the right course. Let us seize it. This is the best and the only way to win or regain the hearts and minds of the European citizens. Long live the European Union. Thank you.
Thank you. For 1.5 minutes, Mr. Annemans for the Identity and Democracy Group.
Collega's, vandaag nemen wij afscheid van.
Colleagues, today we will say goodbye to our friends from the United Kingdom, and I'd like us to make sure that this is a friendly departure. So don't feel sad, colleagues, or some of you talk about a dark day in the history of Europe. That is not at all true. The United Kingdom, after a lengthy debate on the European Union, decided to use the procedures in the treaties which can permit a member state to leave a much too close union. So if we feel sad, well, we who are criticals of the ever closer union, which is so centralised, it's a great shame that we will not be able to count on the support of our British colleagues, and therefore we will now have to go. The countries can proceed towards fuller integration. So let us stop with this political towing and let us try to reach an agreement with the British government, not on the basis of an association agreement. It's not Moldova or Turkey, but a sui generis agreement, so that people are turning towards their full sovereignty, independence and freedom inspires me. And what a wonderful afternoon, what a happy day.
For 1.5 minutes, Mr. Hannan for the European Conservatives and Reformists Group.
How did we get here? Asked Mr Verhofstadt, opening the debate. There was a referendum in 1975 which went in favour of continued membership. There was no continuity leave campaign after that. People accepted the result with good grace. They didn't seek to overturn it. Indeed, Euroscepticism was confined to the fringes of the Benite left. What changed, frankly, was the Maastricht Treaty. Up until that moment, it was still possible to see the EU as a club of nations, as an association of states primarily concerned with trade and economics. But after Maastricht, it became clear that EU jurisdiction was being extended into a whole series of completely uneconomic fields: foreign policy, culture, migration, citizens' rights, etc., and that the aspiration was to have the EU as a quasi-state with a flag and a parliament and a currency and a president and external embassies and all the other accoutrements. If at any stage Britain had been able to have a trade-only association, of course that would have been enough. In fact, even as recently as February 2016, if David Cameron had come back with any repatriation of power, can we doubt that he would have won the ensuing referendum? But faced with the departure of its second financial contributor, the EU was still not prepared to allow any devolution of power, and that ultimately is what made a parting of ways inevitable. So I wish you all the best. I want to return to the kind of vision that Churchill set out, where he said, let's have a united Europe with Britain looking on as a friend and sponsor. You are losing a bad tenant, but gaining a good neighbour. Vous allez perdre un mauvais locataire, vous allez gagner un bon voisin.
For 1.5 minutes, Mr. Sherdevan for the United Left Nordic Green Group.
Thank you, Madam President. First of all, I'd like to thank the British for their contribution to the European Union over 40 years, for good and for ill. But in particular, I want to thank our Irish friend Martina Anderson, who has fought so hard for the people of the north of Ireland. She has made a lasting difference to this Parliament, to the Brexit agreement. GUE NGL will miss her voice. And although Brexit is partly the result of a huge disinformation campaign, I somehow feel that Britain might not be the last member state to leave the European Union, but the first. If the EU doesn't change its political course, more member states might follow. By persisting with austerity and by putting corporate interests ahead of our citizens, governments allow big companies to dominate our lives and our politics. That dominance destroys not only our environment, but our economy, our jobs, our public services, our streets, our local libraries, our railways, our post offices, our schools, our entire social fabric. So don't be surprised the next time we sit here to lament the departure of another member state. Britain may be the first, but it may not be the last. Brexit should be the wake-up call that we must finally put people and planet before profit in Europe. Thank you for your attention.
Thank you. Mr. Farage for 4 minutes.
Thank you very much. So this is it, the final chapter, the end of the road. A 47-year political experiment that the British, frankly, have never been very happy with. My mother and father signed up to a common market, not to a political union, not to flags, anthems, presidents, and now you even want your own army. For me, it's been 27 years of campaigning and over 20 years here in this Parliament. I'm not particularly happy with the agreement we're being asked to vote on tonight, but Boris has been remarkably bold in the last few months, and Ms von der Leyen, he's made it clear, he's promised us there'll be no level playing field. And on that basis, I wish him every success in the next round of negotiations, I really do. But the most significant point is this. What happens at 11 p.m. this Friday, the 31st of January 2020, marks the point of no return. Once we've left, we are never coming back, and the rest, frankly, is detail. We're going, we will be gone. And that should be the summit of my own political ambitions. I walked in here, as I've said before, you all thought it was terribly funny. You stopped laughing in 2016. But my view has changed of Europe since I joined. In 2005, I saw the constitution that had been drafted by Giscard and others. I saw it rejected by the French in a referendum. I saw it rejected by the Dutch in a referendum. And I saw you in these institutions ignore them, bring it back as the Lisbon Treaty and boast you could ram it through without there being referendums. Well, the Irish did have a vote and did say no and were forced to vote again. You're very good at making people vote again, but what we've proved is the British are too big to bully, thank goodness. So I became an outright opponent of the entire European project. I want Brexit to start a debate across the rest of Europe. What do we want from Europe? If we want trade, friendship, cooperation, reciprocity, we don't need a European Commission. We don't need a European Court. We don't need these institutions and all of this power. And I can promise you, both in UKIP and indeed in the Brexit Party, we love Europe. We just hate the European Union. It's as simple as that. So I'm hoping this begins the end of this project. It's a bad project. It isn't just undemocratic, it's anti-democratic, and it puts in that front row. It gives people power without accountability. People who cannot be held to account by the electorate. And that is an unacceptable structure. Indeed, there's an historic battle going on now across the West, in Europe, America and elsewhere. It is globalism against populism. And you may loathe populism, but I tell you a funny thing, it's becoming very popular. And it has great benefits. No more financial contributions, no more European Court of Justice, no more common fisheries policy, no more being talked down to, no more being bullied, no more Guy Verhofstadt. I mean, what's not to like? I know you're going to miss us. I know you want to ban our national flags, but we're going to wave you goodbye. And we'll look forward in the future to working with you as sovereign.
If you disobey the rules, you get cut off. Could we please remove the flags? Mr Farage, could we remove the flags, please?
That's it, it's all over. Finished. We've gone.
Could I please ask for quiet? Please sit down, resume your seats, put your flags away, you're leaving, and take them with you if you are leaving now. And goodbye. Can I just say, if I may say, just in a slight reference, the word hate was used in the last contribution. And I really think, given what we listened to prior to this, that we should not hate anyone or any nation or any people. And I now give the floor to Madam Hübner for 1.5 minutes. Quiet, please, at the back of the room.
Thank you, President. And I must say that the only thing I'm absolutely sure I will not miss is listening to Mr. Farage. I speak here as EPP representative in the Brexit Steering Group, but also as former chair of Constitutional Affairs Committee, who had, over those Brexit years, nearly 500 meetings with all those potentially affected by Brexit. From the very beginning of the negotiations, the EU side has aimed at an orderly withdrawal based on an agreement. This is the only thing we could do to give legal certainty to the process, and we have achieved this goal. I hope most of us will endorse the consent to the Council decision on conclusion of this agreement to avoid hard Brexit. From the very beginning of this process, we have been also clear that UK withdrawal is not a final destination. Now we should aim at a close, comprehensive agreement on the future relationship, preferably in the form of an association agreement, embracing both close economic partnership partnership and security cooperation. We know that the UK political choice has been taking the control back. So yes, we are aware that if UK aims at divergence from European norms and standards, it can put at risk even a bare-bone FTA. That is why a well-tailored agreement on level playing field will be crucial, Mr. Farage. But there is ahead of us, as the European Parliament, also the task to have a watchful eye on the implementation and enforcement of the withdrawal agreement. Of particular importance for us will be the oversight of the implementation of citizens' rights and of the Irish Protocol. To conclude, let me call on the Commission to respect the commitment of its former President to involve the European Parliament in the work of the Joint Committee, and let me reach out to Robert Burns and say, for auld lang syne. Thank you.
Thank you. Could I please remind us of our speaking time limitations? For 2 minutes, Mr. Corbett.
Against this withdrawal agreement because it's bad for Britain, it's bad for Europe, and we think it was wrong for Boris Johnson to proceed without putting it back to the British people to a confirmatory referendum. That was like saying to the British public, you had your say 3 years ago, 4 years ago now. Now you have to shut up and accept whatever I come up with, no matter how bad it is, and no matter how different it is from what he promised. 4 years ago, Johnson and his Leave campaign said this would all be easy. It's turned out to be rather difficult. They said it would save lots of money that would all go to the NHS. It's turning out to cost a fortune. They said it would be good for Britain and the economy. The opposite is true. That's why the British public voted 53% in our elections for parties demanding another referendum. Brexit does not have the wholehearted consent of the British people. And that's for very good reasons. It bears no resemblance to what they were promised. Nor will his promise to get Brexit done on the 31st of January turn out to be anything like true. That's the beginning of the next phase, negotiations to settle issues which will prove very difficult. Britain has to make difficult choices. Will it want to stay close to the European Union, aligned with the rules, or distance itself? If it distances itself, it has huge economic costs. If it aligns itself, it has to follow the rules without having a say on them anymore. Neither is actually good for Britain. And that's why public opinion will continue to move against Brexit. That's why I predict that the catchphrase next year in our media and social media will be, Brexit isn't working. That's what people will say. And that's why that, and the fact that it is especially our young people who are strongly against Brexit, that this may indeed not be an adieu. It may just be an au revoir. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you. Just to say that I did ask colleagues to remove their flags from their desks. Our British colleagues have obliged. They've left the chamber with their flags. I would ask that other colleagues please do the same. I am bound to apply the rules that the President has set. With due respect, it is not an abuse of the... Could I just say, Mr. Animals, this is an emotional debate. I'm trying to keep the House in order and to say, please don't shout back. You don't have the microphone. And I'm not going to give points of order. I am going to say that that is the rule. I've done my best to try and apply it. I am not going to physically remove the flags myself, but I would ask you to respect the Speaker. I am doing my job on behalf of this House. So I now thank you for your support. I now give the floor to Madam Voden for 1 minute.
Last July, when I came to this Parliament with 15 colleagues, we were full of optimism and hope. Today, our mood is very sombre. In a world that is ever more interconnected, with problems that don't respect national borders, Brexit is a backward step. Here, we have seen democratically elected politicians work together with each other across party, across groups, across national divides. It is truly inspirational. Brexit is the result of an ideological divide in an old political party that should have split decades ago, but it won't because of a voting system that is not fit for purpose. And the only silver lining in this very dark cloud is that the division caused by Brexit could now be the catalyst for something even bigger. A wholesale reform of our democracy in the UK, which will mean that our country can never again be hijacked by a vanity project that has no basis in reality. We will hold our government to account every step of the way. They have promised us the earth. Let's see if they can deliver. We are still Europeans. For now, we say merci, au revoir. This is not goodbye.
Thank you. We now move. Thank you, colleagues. Please resume your seats. Our next speaker is Madam Evans for 1 minute.
Thank you, President. Colleagues, I took my seat in this House representing Wales over 20 years ago. Wales has benefited hugely from EU membership. We also had a lot to contribute. Now, despite my best efforts, Welsh is still not a fully official language, but I will use it now in my final speech in this Parliament. Hoffwn ddiolch o galon I bobl Cymru sydd wedi rhoi ffydd ynddo fi I fod yn llais dros ein cenedl yn Ewrop. Rwyf wedi cadw fy ddewyd I godi profil a diogelu buddiannau Cymru. Dyw'r daith hon ddim ar ben o bell ffordd. Mae gyda ni uchelgais i'n cenedl. Wales is a European nation. I believe our future is within the EU. We are leaving now. But know this, in our hearts, we are still here. Rydyn ni yma o hyd, and we will be back. Diolch yn fawr. Thank you.
Thank you. For 1 minute, Mr. Moiten.
Frau Präsidentin,
Madam President, ladies and gentlemen, with the United Kingdom, one of the most important countries of the European Union are leaving. Finally, these negotiations have come to an end. The representative of a clearly smaller European Union has really shot itself in the foot, because I think at the end of the day you will see how, with your sombre forecast, the United Kingdom, economically speaking, will really move towards new shores. Brexit, really, for the remaining member states, is really going to be an economic and other fragility. We really need to reform. We need to stop talking about sovereignty of nations and the freedom of people. You don't want to continue grasping more and more power in Brussels. We stay friends and freedom. You will have more freedom than we Remainers are going to have.
Make Britain great again. Good luck, guys.
For 1.5 minutes, Mr. Van Orden.
Thank you very much, Madam President. And may I first of all say a big thank you to colleagues from other nations who've made such generous remarks this afternoon. But I have to say, you know, Britain always sat somewhat uneasily in the European Union. A common market is indeed what many thought they'd joined, rather than a project for political integration. The advance of the EU juggernaut through Monnet's small steps was sometimes hardly noticed, as national borders were eroded and more policy areas became EU competences, so British disenchantment intensified. Not surprisingly, as we hear the answer to every problem is more Europe, and we even hear this from colleagues from the left in the British political setup. Friday will mark the beginning of a new relationship between Britain and the European Union. The negotiation this year of a free trade agreement and other arrangements should be seen as an opportunity, not a confrontation. It's in the interests of both the EU and the UK for a good agreement negotiated with goodwill and flexibility based on precedent to be concluded in friendship and before the end of the year. Britain will still be a European power, the leading European power in NATO, committed to the security of the democracies of the European continent, sharing many of the standpoints and aspirations of the nations of Europe, an independent sovereign country with friendly relations with the EU. That's our aim. Madam President, may I just say on a personal note, I spent 30 years as a British Army officer and now 20 years representing Britain in this European Parliament. I've enjoyed my work and I want to say a big thank you to all colleagues here and to the officials and personal staff that I've worked with over the years. Thank you and farewell.
Thank you. Madam Anderson for 2 minutes.
On Friday at 11 p.m, this Irish MEP will be kicked out of this Parliament against the democratic wishes of the people of Ireland who voted to remain and who want to stay in the EU. After 47 years of membership and after 50 years of fighting against gerrymandering in places like Derry, the British government is once again kicking our voting rights away, taking them away from us, and once again changing the constitutional position of the people of Ireland without our consent. Today, I am voting in favour of this Irish protocol because Sinn Féin will not consent to the hardening of the British border partition in Ireland. We will not consent to custom posts. We will not consent to barbed wire. There is no doubt that the Irish protocol in the withdrawal agreement is an ugly compromise, but it's better than a crash-out Brexit. However, partition and Brexit are ugly impositions that have burdened Ireland for years. Because of partition, Brexit is stripping away our democratic and social rights. But because of Brexit, a dynamic conversation about Irish unity has been invigorated. The EU Council made its contribution to Irish unity when, on the 29th of April 2017, 27 member states agreed that if Ireland is reunified, the whole of Ireland is in the EU. The partition of Ireland is not only a problem for us in Ireland. The 300-mile border with 320 border crossings is now your problem too. When Britain gets its empire back, showing it cares nothing about your level playing field, and when shady, low-standard products with minimum protection make their way into your market, you will not be long in joining the sensible people in supporting Irish unity. There is no doubt that a day will come when Irish MEPs from the north will be back in the European Parliament. Mark my words, Chucky and La Shin.
I'm really sorry, but you've overrun significantly. We move now to our next speaker for 1 minute, Mr. Kola Kušić.
President, dear colleagues, the EU is primarily a community of citizens of the EU. Most countries entered the EU over direct voting in the referenda. Citizens said in the referenda that they wanted to be members of the EU. The question asked there was quite simple, yes or no. And now the citizens of the EU answered a simple question with yes or no. How do citizens decide on being members of a union or a community? Of course, they decide if they get more benefit than harm. They want equality and respect and economic benefit. If citizens of a country see that other citizens of other countries have more economic benefit, they will seek to leave the EU. So maybe this is not the end. Thank you.
González Pons for 1 minute.
British colleagues, we have had disagreements,
but you have been loyal in the debates. Europe is today a better place because of you. We will never forget that your parents fought on oceans and seas, on the beach and landing grounds, in the fields, in the streets, in the hills, that they did never surrender. Our freedom lies in their generosity. Our peace lies in their sacrifice. We are blood brothers and sisters, a community of hope. We shall never forget it. You should never forget it. So, in this crucial moment of history, let me tell you that it's been the greatest honour to share the last 46 years with you, and that the day will come that we will be reunited again. I don't know when, I don't know how, but as we learn from your parents, surrender is never an option. Dear colleagues, God bless United Kingdom. God bless all of us.
Thank you. 2 minutes, Mr. Silva Pereira, please.
Sadly, we will have to vote today on the agreement on the withdrawal of the United Kingdom from the European Union. And we will do it for one reason and one reason only. This agreement is needed for damage control. Brexit, even many of those who voted to leave know it by now, will always be damaging. Damaging for the European Union, even more damaging for the UK, and most of all, damaging for our capacity to tackle together the common challenges we face. But if Brexit is to happen, it is better to have it in an orderly way, providing for a transition period, avoiding by now a catastrophic no-deal scenario, safeguarding citizens' rights, and ensuring an open border between Ireland and Northern Ireland. But we are not here today only to vote on an agreement. We are here to write history. Unfortunately, the page that is going to be written today is regrettable. I wish to thank our British colleagues with great emotion for their valuable contribution to the European project. And looking ahead, I want to assure them that we will do our best in order to negotiate a fruitful future relationship with the UK for the benefit of both parties, while safeguarding the integrity of the single market, our high environmental and social standards, and citizens' rights. And finally, let me say that despite Brexit and this rising movement of nationalism and populism, the European project will prevail ensuring peace, will prevail delivering prosperity and defending our common values. Thank you.
Thank you. For 1 minute, Mr. Newton-Dunn.
Thank you very much, Madam President. I want to make 2 points. First of all, the root cause why the UK is leaving is because the leaders of the parties at Westminster, the 2 big parties, live in a fantasy world. They work in ancient buildings and they still think the buildings were built for an empire and they still think they're running an empire and are a superpower. Consequently, they have never told the British people the reality that we are a European country and not a superpower. And even our children in the schools are not taught in the curriculum about Europe. So there has been an abject failure by Westminster. Now, sadly, in this debate, Farage, who's gone, and Hannan, who I think is still in there, told a complete untruth. This project was never about free trade. It was always about more than free trade, an ever closer union. And even Mrs. Thatcher in the referendum campaign in 1975 said this is about more than just free trade. So when they talk about free trade only, it's been misleading the British people all the way along, and that's a disgrace. Last thing I want to say is I've been privileged enough to have been elected here for the first time in 1979, a very long time ago, and I still want to see next, it isn't finished, I want to see the construction of a European FBI to fight cross-border crime, because our police forces, we have 500 in Europe, none of them can cross borders and pursue the criminals. So colleagues, keep building, keep going on. As Liliana Segre said to us, one
Thank you, sir.
Another.
I would just remind ourselves again about time. So please stick to your time. For our next speaker for 1 minute, Mr. Rinaldi. I beg your pardon. I'm obviously jumping the gun, watching time was finishing. Madame Delbos Corfield, for 1 minute, you have the floor. Apologies.
It is important to remember that the majority of women and young people of UK voted to stay in the European Union. 75% of the 18-24 years old voted to keep the United Kingdom in the European Union. More specifically, 80% of women between the age of 18 and 24 were against Brexit. And there is a reason to that. European Union protects women's rights to a great extent. Will UK out of Europe give the same guarantees? The Scots, the Northern Irish, the Welsh by their citizens' votes, and also these last 2 years by the national parliaments have continued to express their attachment to the European Union. They now find themselves on the sidelines. The choices of these regional populations are not heard, and this is one of the major problems of Brexit. But there is another concern, a very strong one. Great Britain today is a country with a very deregulated economy and a very unequal society. European directives on workers' rights were the last bulwark for the most vulnerable part, women, minorities and young people. We Greens, regionalists and pirates will pay close attention to the situation of citizens' rights in the aftermath. We are committed to protecting the rights of all Europeans living in Britain and British people living in the rest of Europe.
Thank you. And now for 1 minute, Mr. Rinaldi.
Thank you very much, fellow members of Parliament. Today we are being called to vote not on the withdrawal of the United Kingdom from Europe, but from the European Union. And as far as I am concerned, the United Kingdom has always been a part of Europe and will always be a part of Europe so long as the Earth circulates around the sun. We know that sovereignty to people is a great achievement, and the United Kingdom has embodied this principle fully. I am sure that history will be extremely severe with Barnier. Barnier was the worst negotiator ever. In 2016, he said, I will succeed in my task if the agreement is so hard on the English that they will want to stay in the European Union. And I am sorry, but I'm going to have to say now, God save the Queen. Thank you.
For 1 minute, Mr. Bourgeois.
Thank you, Madam. Thank you so much. Well, my feelings today are feelings of satisfaction that we have an orderly Brexit, thanks to Michel Barnier. And I also feel sad because our British partners, our British allies, our friends are going to be leaving us. And thirdly, a respect. Respect is what I feel for the decision of the British people, but who says Brexit should think about the future of the European Union. We need to try and develop a very deep partnership with our British friends, and we only have 8 months to deal with this, so we need to move in a different direction than we were going for other negotiations. We were talking about liberalisation, but we need to keep a free market. We need to make sure that there is as much free trade in the internal market, and let us think about the future. I have a lot to say about the future of the Union. After Brexit, more than ever, the European Union needs to play a geopolitical role. Thank you.
Mr. Carthy, for 1 minute.
Last Uachtaráin, this Friday, part of our country will be taken out of the European Union against the wishes of the vast majority of people who live there. I'm proud of Sinn Féin's record in this Parliament and elsewhere in working to ensure that the repercussions of Brexit for the north of Ireland, for the border regions and for our entire island have been minimised in this withdrawal agreement. But the fact remains that from this weekend, one part of Ireland will be in the EU while the other part will operate outside, and the complications that come with that are yet to be told. The future trading relationship between Britain and the EU could yet create unprecedented difficulties for the Irish economy and vulnerable sectors, particularly agriculture. So much work remains to be done, and Sinn Féin will be a leading voice in protecting Ireland's interests in the trade negotiations, in calling for mitigation measures from any economic Brexit fallout, and for presenting the case for Irish unity as a crucial mechanism to withstand the worst excesses of British Tory policies, which once again have no mandate in any part of Ireland.
Thank you. Mr. Kelly, 1 minute.
When somebody leaves after 50 years, it's bound to be emotional and sad. I think that's the way many of us feel here today. And I can understand, like Ivar Hofstadt, that so many British citizens would ask me to vote against the withdrawal agreement. My heart says yes, but my head says no, because we have to respect the decision of the British people and leave them leave with good grace and pay tribute to them, their prime ministers, their ambassadors, and above all their MEPs, who played a mammoth role in building up the European Union, and especially for their friendship and support to us Irish MEPs and Ireland generally. They will continue to be our close allies for many years to come. But I am conscious that the young people of the United Kingdom did not want to leave, and for that reason, when their day comes, it is very likely they will decide to come back into the European Union. So instead of saying slán or goodbye, I say a bientôt. Beg falta roiv arash.
We'll welcome you back. Thank you.
Sean Anish for 1 minute, Mr. Ruiz de Veza.
Thank you very much, Madam President. It has been said, a very sad day for the pro-Europeans, most of the members of this House. We will be voting in favour of this agreement because there is no choice in order to avoid the worst, which is a no-deal Brexit. But I think it is important also to reply to some of the things that have been said by Mr. Hannan and Mr. Farage and Mr. Van Orden. They said, it's the fault of the Maastricht Treaty. This was never to be a political union. And I ask you, never you read the Schuman Declaration of 1950, when it said that the coal and steel community was the first step for a European federation? Why is it that Clement Attlee and Anthony Eden didn't want to sign up to the coal and steel community or to the common market? It was because of the pooling of sovereignty. So you decided to leave, but don't give the wrong answers to the matter at hand. Good luck and see you soon.
Thank you. For 1 minute, Ms. Long. Microphone, please.
For me, today is a historic day, but one of profound regret at the departure of the United Kingdom from its place of influence within the European Union. I will vote against the withdrawal agreement today to record the continued opposition of those whom I represent to this insular, isolationist and reckless course of action. But I want to place on record my thanks to Michel Barnier and his team for all they have done to mitigate that recklessness. The people of Northern Ireland rejected Brexit in 2016 and we are certainly not accepting it now. Whilst the UK may withdraw...
Could I just ask, we need to listen to the speakers, and there's a lot of people to my right here who are having a great old chat. There's a restaurant outside, go for a coffee. Ms Long, this is her last speech here in the Parliament. Please listen with respect.
Thank you. Whilst the UK may withdraw from these institutions, the people of Northern Ireland will never withdraw the hand of friendship, the spirit of cooperation, or the shared determination to secure peace and prosperity for all of our people. As a child of the Northern Ireland conflict, I am grateful to the European Union, which helped shape our peace and which provides a model for pragmatic win-win politics, not based upon division but upon diversity. The decisions you make in this place will continue to shape the lives of the people I represent, and I look forward to forging new ways of ensuring that those close and enduring partnerships built between Northern Ireland and this place flourish. Finally, whilst we will no longer be colleagues in these institutions, I remain your steadfast colleague outside of them, as together we continue to champion the values of cooperation, interdependence and mutual respect which the European Union represents. Until one day we rejoin you here. Au revoir, auf Wiedersehen, slán go fóill, goodbye for now.
Thank you. Thank you, colleagues. Thank you, colleagues. Can I just say, if I lose my job because I haven't been able to keep to time, will you speak up for me in my defence? Can I move now, and with a certain amount of guilty pleasure, give the floor to Madam and Professor Scott Cato for 1 minute, please.
Thank you so much, President. In spite of the powerful campaign we've waged for 4 years, with grief and regret, I accept that we will leave the European Union on Friday. Oh no, here come the tears. Our future as a country has no clear shape beyond a few slogans, and this means that we have some very important political tasks ahead. As the Brexit losses mount, we must counter the betrayal narrative, where those who promoted the doomed strategy tried to shift the blame for the damage onto the EU and onto those of us who argued against it. We must demonstrate compassion and solidarity with EU citizens living in the UK who feel vulnerable and fearful. And we must revitalise the friendship groups and twinning associations that thrived in the decades before we joined the EU. Now is not the time to campaign to rejoin. But we must keep the dream alive, especially for young people who are overwhelmingly pro-European. I hold in my heart the knowledge that one day I will be back in this chamber celebrating our return to the heart of Europe. Thank you.
Thank you, colleagues. Thank you, colleagues. Just a little bit of quiet, please. Mr. Madison, you have 1 minute. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Madam Chair. What a show tonight again, for the last time, finally. First of all, I will not cry. I will congratulate for the British guys. The one thing what I would like to mention is that last week the IMF was prognosing that the UK's economy will grow next 2 years after Brexit faster than the Eurozone's economy. So it means that all those Remainers were lying before the Brexit elections what we had. They were lying that the UK will have a crash in the economy. So they were lying. And the second thing, if they are growing faster than the EU is doing, it means that the EU is doing something very wrong. If we are so successful, why we are so slow and that they are so fast? And for the final statement, I really wish great party celebrations for the Friday night. We will celebrate with you. Have a nice drinks.
Madam McIntyre, for 1 minute, please.
I want to really thank friends and colleagues from across all the political groups for great cooperation over many years. We've certainly not always agreed, but we have all worked for what we believe is in the best interests of the people we represent. My overwhelming feeling is of a job well done, though not always understood back home. I am proud of all that my colleagues have achieved in here over many years, and I want to pay tribute to the British Conservative MEPs who have gone before and contributed enormously to this Parliament and the legacy we leave behind. I want to thank previous speakers for their very generous remarks towards the UK. It is important that we leave on good terms, with a climate of friendly cooperation for productive talks on a trade deal ahead. I'm not saying it will be easy, but I do think that it's in the best interests of all of us. And finally, I speak as a very proud daughter of a Scottish soldier who landed on D-Day in the beaches of Normandy. We are all Europeans. We are certainly leaving the European institutions, but we are not leaving Europe.
Thank you. Mr. McAllister, for 1 minute, please.
Madam President, thank you. For me, Brexit is and will remain a historic mistake. However, this withdrawal agreement provides now for an orderly exit of the UK from our EU by addressing all issues that have been of key importance for us in the European Parliament from the onset of the negotiations. We must now focus on our common future relations. I believe the EU should enter these negotiations from a position of certainty, goodwill, respect and mutual interest. At the same time, we need to acknowledge that our partnership will remain close, but will no longer be the same. We need to negotiate a truly ambitious and comprehensive new partnership with the UK. But because of the limited time frame for negotiations, we cannot expect to agree on every single aspect of our new partnership. We will have to prioritise, as Commission President Ursula von der Leyen has pointed out. I would like to thank all members of the Brexit Steering Group for the very good work they have done, and I hope to continue their good work in the UK Coordination Group, which I'm honoured to chair. More than 100 meetings of the Brexit Steering Group is an impressive track record. Let me thank our colleagues, the staff, and especially Mr Guy Verhofstadt for his excellent work. Thank you.
Thank you. Madam Barley, for 1 minute.
Thank you very much. On this Holocaust Remembrance Day, I would like to quote a great European, former German Chancellor Helmut Schmidt, who said, "Rather debate 100 hours in vain than shoot for 1 minute." And why do I say that here and now? Because, yes, the European Union is complicated, slow, sometimes intransparent, but it's the closest we come to what Schmidt meant. For me, the European Union is not only about trade and about finances. It's about values and it's about peace. My father is English. He was born in 1935, not far from a Royal Air Force base. And he loved, as a kid, to see the bombers raise into the sky. And my mother is German. She was born in 1940, and she fled through the city of Dresden the day after it was bombed. So the image that the bombers my father cherished almost killed my mother is something that brought me into politics in the first place. And it will always be this image that keeps me going and that will keep me being a bridge between these two countries, a bridge over troubled water at the moment, as Art Garfunkel would say. It's so sad to see you leaving, but you still have friends in this house.
Thank you. We move to Madam Porritt for 1 minute.
Colleagues, I will today vote against this deal. I do so on behalf of the millions of British people who voted to remain, including my constituents in London. Brexit is a regressive, reckless, right-wing project. The only people celebrating it outside the UK are those who wish to weaken us all. This decision is harmful for young people, our fellow Europeans living in the UK, and the most vulnerable. Over the last 2 days, we have welcomed young Brits to this Parliament. They don't want Brexit. They value common endeavours over isolationism. Brexit is now inevitable, but I don't believe it will be permanent. Young Brits will one day lead the campaign for us to rejoin as committed members invested in our shared European future. À bientôt, cher ami.
Thank you. Thank you, colleagues. I now give the floor for 1 minute to Madam McLeod.
Thank you, Madam President. And as a Scottish MEP, I will be voting against the withdrawal agreement, as the majority of my country has mandated me to do. The people of Scotland have consistently voted against Brexit. Scotland's Parliament has refused to give its consent to this Brexit deal. And the tragedy for Scotland is that on Friday, Scotland will be dragged out of the EU against the democratic wishes of our people. Scotland is a European nation, and I look forward to an independent Scotland rejoining the EU, and we will soon, playing a positive role and promoting Europe's values, international solidarity and cooperation as an equal partner. Now, I'm proud to have been a member of this Parliament of Europe's citizens, and I give you my word that Scotland's government will continue to protect the interests of all EU citizens who've chosen to make Scotland their home and have contributed to our society in so many important ways. And when the moment comes for Scotland to rejoin the EU, I hope this Parliament will welcome us in that same spirit of European solidarity. And in the meantime, I hope very much that you will leave a light on for Scotland.
Thank you. Madam Huhtasaari for 1 minute.
Dear President, it's a final countdown. Next Friday will be a glorious day for United Kingdom. Brexit is the victory of the common British people against multinational corporations, special interests and other elites. The 2020s is the decade when the national state makes the ultimate comeback in Europe. The supranational, uncountable bureaucracy will be rolled back in favour of real democracy at national level. Britain will triumph outside of EU. The island nation began a shining movement that cannot be stopped. Farewell to the Brexit Party. I love you guys.
For 1 minute, Madam Mubarak.
Madam President, respected colleagues, Friday will see the UK leave the EU.
Sorry, Madam, just a little bit of quiet in the chamber on all sides, please, because it is filling up now. So just listen to the speakers. Madam, you have the floor.
Thank you. Thank you. Friday will see the UK leave the EU. The result of the democratic referendum of 2016 will be honoured. That is as it should be. But I also know that it is the end of an era for myself, for my UK colleagues, and for my country. Even those supportive of Brexit know that much has been accomplished through our membership of the EU. And as we look forward to the new opportunities of the future, we should at the same time always remember the achievements of the past. As I said recently in my last International Trade Committee meeting, we require much goodwill and good faith in our negotiations for a future trading relationship aiming for a successful outcome which will benefit both the UK and the EU. And I have every confidence that good faith exists and that a successful outcome will indeed be achieved. My own view is that this is not the end of the UK's relationship with Europe, but rather the start of a new and enhanced one. The bonds of friendship that bind our countries, all 28 of them, will endure and I hope deepen still further as we work together in future productive partnerships.
Thank you. For 1 minute, Madam De Lange.
How did we get here? Daniel Hannan asked at the beginning of this debate. And I'm afraid, dear colleagues, that he didn't give you a full answer. So let me try. We got here because so-called leaders who acted out of self-interest rather than out of the common good. Brexit or Remain, Boris didn't really care, did he? He made up his mind at the last minute and saw a ticket into Downing Street 10. This is, secondly, what happens when part of the media get away with misinformation and blatant lies. When journalism, when the tabloids become entertainment instead of information, democracy ultimately suffers. And this is, thirdly, what happens when people no longer speak up for European cooperation. We might 75 years after the end of the Second World War in the West, I need to say, take peace, stability, democracy for granted. But let me tell you one thing, our union is unique and our cooperation is very, very vulnerable. We need to cherish it, yes, we need to improve it, but we also need to speak out and defend it. And let that, dear colleagues, be the lesson that we take out of Brexit. Thank you very much.
Thank you. 1 minute, Ms. Griffin.
Friends, every day in this House, a member of another delegation says, please stay. We want you to remain. Britain's withdrawal from the European Union is a political tragedy that will damage the economic well-being and social fabric of the UK and diminish our country's standing in the world. We are British and European and part of the most successful social peace project in history. For the clean air we want for our children, to eradicating energy poverty, to workers' rights, that's got to be worth fighting for. I continue to believe that Britain has been and would be best served by being a member of the European Union. For our young people and future generations, keep the faith that one day we can come back. Thank you. Merci. Curtanom. A bientôt. And to you, Mairead Graham-Mahagat.
For now, for 1 minute, Madam Ritchie.
Thank you. Thank you, Mr. Barnier. Thank you, Guy. Thank you to the European Parliament for the way that you have treated us through the negotiation on this withdrawal agreement. I'm shocked, but frankly not surprised, that it took your intervention to protect the rights of the EU 27 certificate citizens in Britain and the British citizens in the EU 27 countries. You people here have an opportunity next month to be generous to us again when you consider our status as citizens in your Europe going forward. Please be kind to us again. This shameful document, which I will vote against, is our reality today. I'm going home to fight for a better reality tomorrow.
Thank you. For 1 minute, Mr. Bardella. Just hold, sir.
Merci, Madame la Présidente. Nous y...
Thank you, President. We're finally here. It took us 4 years. 4 years of false promises, delays, many tries to sabotage this. 4 years for the sovereign vote of a referendum to be heard. European leaders want us to think that the British people are going to be the losers of this. But actually, they will be getting back in touch with the instruments of freedom of a nation. You can never vote against the real. The IMF has said that the UK's economy is going well and that prospects for growth are promising. And this is a chapter in history. This sovereignty will be to the benefit of everyone. This is a message of hope from the British people. They are going to help us deal with the challenges of tomorrow. You're leaving the European Union, but you remain in Europe.
For 1 minute, Mr. Miamaracas.
Thank you very much, Madam President.
There is no doubt about the fact that this vote is of historic importance. And I'd like to state very clearly that the United Kingdom has to be a close ally of the European Union. And it's extremely important to make sure that we have a trade agreement that benefits both sides at a time that trade rules are being trampled on and protectionism is rearing its ugly head. That is why, ladies and gentlemen, unfortunately, Brexit is a reality, and today is a sad day, a very emotional day. Whether this will be a historic mistake for the UK, it will be up for historians of the future to judge. What the EU cannot allow is this to become a historic mistake for the European Union, because we have to learn from what led to Brexit and show that EU values are necessary, they are long-lasting, and as Jean Monnet said, Europe will be molded by crises and will be the result of the solutions that were decided upon because of the crisis. And this crisis has to count in a positive way for the EU.
For 1 minute.
Thank you very much, Madam President. Today is a sad day for those like me who believe in a closer Europe, a federal Europe. It's a historical and political fact that nationalism will not erase. Brexit won't be able to do away with the very strong ties between the UK and Europe. We have human rights and other ties, not just trade ties and economic ties. We will fight hard to make sure that the UK and the EU tackle current challenges together, from inequality to the fight against climate change. To those colleagues leaving today, I'd like to say thank you. Thank you for the sterling job that we've done together. And to the Labour Party, I'd like to say thank you. Thank you for working together for bread and roses. Arrivederci to you. It is our fate to continue walking together. Thank you.
Thank you. Madam Bunting for 1 minute.
Hvala, sedaj pa gospa Bunting za 1 minuto.
I can't quite believe. I love the UK, and I will do everything I can to make sure that our future, whatever it is bright and successful. However, this is a bad deal for Britain, and the fault for that lies at the feet of the British government. The deal takes Britain outside of the customs union and the single market, something certain leading leavers said need never happen. In it, Boris Johnson has weakened support for workers' rights, and he did that after he put the deal to the British people. It adds more red tape, more delays, more barriers to Brits who want to work and do business with the EU, who is our largest trading partner. And it removes opportunities for young people in Britain. I thank all of my colleagues here for your lovely, kind words today. We will miss you. I thank Guy and Michel Barnier and this Brexit steering group for the huge amount of work that they will put into this deal. But I will not be blackmailed by Boris Johnson into supporting a deal that is fundamentally bad for Britain.
Thank you. 1 minute, Mr. Mureşan.
Thank you, Madam President. Dear colleagues, today marks the end of populism in the debate regarding Brexit. Starting tomorrow, we need to start to work on our future relationship, and that needs to be based on reasoning and on facts. And we have to recognise reality. European students want to continue to study in UK universities, and British students want to continue to study in European universities. European and British researchers want to continue to work together, and businesses on both sides of the channel want to continue to invest on the other side. We also have to recognise that the number of British citizens demanding EU citizenship has increased every year after the referendum. So we need to work on a good future relationship, and we need to recognise that a close relationship is a good relationship. Nevertheless, of course, we also know that the European Union and the United Kingdom will not be married anymore starting the 1st of February, but we want to be friends. And the people of the United Kingdom should know that here in the European Parliament there is a majority of members who want to be friends of the British people. Thank you.
Thank you. Mr. Horwood for 1 minute. Microphone, and you can start from now.
Madam, I'm voting against this agreement because it's a bad deal for Britain, and I, for one, will not go gently into that good night. But before that vote, I'd like to say thank you to all parliamentary colleagues, to Dacian Ciolos and friends in Renew Europe, whom I've been proud to serve as a Vice President. And thank you to the EU for all the support given to my region and my country over decades in education, science and medicine, in shared prosperity, opportunity and support for business, in protection of the environment and workers' rights, and by preserving Europe's peace. And let me tell you, my parents survived the war we remembered earlier, and they knew exactly what they were voting for in 1975. And one special thank you to our translators, who've had to help the Brits rather more than most. And I apologise to them that I'm now going to try and speak in more than one language to deliver one last message on behalf as much on behalf of my children as myself. Wir werden wiederkommen.
We'll be back.
Wir kommen terug. Nous reviendrons. Volveremos. Beimish arash. Wir kommen tillbaka. Retornaremo. We will be back.
Thank you, colleagues. Please. We do have another speaker. Mr. Horwood, thank you. Please resume your seats. Thank you. Michaud Bellamé for 1 minute.
Madame la Présidente.
Madam President, ladies and gentlemen, well, all of us would like to express a vote of thanks to our British colleagues for the contribution to the work that's been done here. We have a great deal of respect for the people they represent and our gratitude to that people. And we owe them a debt of gratitude because of the liberty that we have, thanks to the blood they spilled. Obviously, we need to continue this story, and we have great confidence in Michel Barnier for preparing that future in terms of partnership when it comes to security, economy, the environment, and also fisheries, which is something that's very close to our hearts. There's so much we have to share. This friendship must be continued now. But ladies and gentlemen, Brexit, of course, is also a note of warning. What we saw on the occasion of the referendum should serve as a warning to us. We are not going to resolve the problems of Europe by disrespecting that majority. We will only deal with that if we build a Europe that inspires the confidence of our citizens by proving its efficiency and by showing that it can bolster our democracy and serve our freedom. Thank you.
Thank you very much. I would like to give the floor to Michel Barnier.
Merci, Monsieur le Président. Thank you very much, President. I'm very touched, I have to say, having seen the debate. It was a moving debate. Specific moments were certainly extremely moving, occasionally very serious and solemn, which I think was important. Sitting next to Ursula von der Leyen, I think this is important. Just a few words of conclusion. The UK, following the referendum, where a majority of citizens expressed their democratic choice to leave the European Union. And many of us here regret that decision. We continue to regret the vote, but we respected it. And so the task that we've been mandated with in the Commission, by the governments, by you, was to work to organise the withdrawal. And if the withdrawal treaty that's been put to you has one quality, ladies and gentlemen, I'll pick up on the word that Guy Verhofstadt used, and that is to organise a withdrawal of the United Kingdom from the EU in an orderly fashion. Brexit, more than has been the case where many have discussed the consequences, but I would say there are innumerable consequences in social terms, in legal terms, in financial and economic terms, and there's more. What we've tried to do in this treaty, in an objective fashion, in a patient fashion, with all due respect, is to try and come up with responses or legal assurances for all of those and all sectors where Brexit, as with a divorce, will generate insecurity and uncertainty for many citizens. And their rights have always been at the centre of our deliberations. It was always been our priority. That was the spirit within which we did our job. An orderly withdrawal. We had hundreds of meetings of the Brexit steering group, 17 plenary sittings, and I've had the honour of meeting many of you in your groups on many occasions. And now I'd like to just say a word to Guy Verhofstadt for the intelligence with which he has dexterously been in this group, for every one of this group, and everybody who's worked for the group, most notably the General Secretariat of the European Parliament and your staff. If I may, I'd like to say that we're going to continue in the year that comes, in this current year, with the same spirit, the same objectivity, without any aggression, by firmly, however, defending the interests of the Union and its member states, following the line and the principles that were recalled to us by our President, Ursula von der Leyen, in terms of the future relations, with the perspective in the back of our minds, but that's something I've always done. Going beyond Brexit, the UK will remain there. It will remain a close partner when it comes to the economy. It will be an ally, as it always has been, and it will be a friend. And we are going to work to regenerate a new legal framework for that alliance between the European Union and the United Kingdom, to consolidate that friendship and to make sure that this partnership works. There's a second task, ladies and gentlemen, Mr. President, that shouldn't be underestimated and shouldn't be forgotten of, and that is to implement this agreement in all of its aspects. And that is the work that we have this year, that it will be operational by the end of this year. I'm thinking of citizens' rights, and I'm thinking particularly about the Republic of Ireland and Northern Ireland, where peace is always a fragile issue. As our President's already done, I would like to thank all the British MEPs who, in some way, shape or form, have been working for 47 years on the construct of this European project. I have a personal memory of many of you. Think of Andrew Duff, Richard Corbett, the work that was done on the convention, but also on the two occasions where I had the honour to be a European Commissioner for the internal market and previously for regional policy. Vicky Ford, Malcolm Harbour, Sharon Bowles, and so many of you in the diversity of the groups that you represent, with whom I've always had useful and important and constructive discussions. I would like to thank you all on a personal note. And maybe if I could just wind up with just three brief messages. The first is that throughout the whole of this negotiations and for the year to come, our task has been and will be to deal with the consequences of Brexit. And I would say, as many of you have already said very forcefully, that in our political responsibilities, and I am a politician first and foremost, that we take the time to listen to the people, listen to what they said on the occasion of Brexit, but also that listen to what they're saying in many regions, to draw lessons from what has happened with Brexit. The second point refers to a conference that was organised by my colleague in the European Commission, somebody I respect, Chris Patten, who's a British Conservative. Chris Patten had a conference that he held in Dublin, and he concluded with this question: the defence of national interest, could that solely be a national concern? The defence of the national interest, that can that solely be of national interest? You can put that in other terms. Is it not necessary to be European over and above being a patriot? I would say not instead of, over and above, in addition to. And I would say you need to be a patriot and a European at the same time. That European dimension gives an additional boost of force to our own national patriotism.
Mr. President, let me finish with a short message I passed in Belfast on Monday at Queen's University. In this new beginning, I would really and sincerely like to wish the UK well.
Monsieur Barnier, adesso la parola.
Thank you, Mr. Barnier. Minister Brionet is next.
Ladies and gentlemen, with your vote tonight and adoption by the Council tomorrow of its decision to conclude the withdrawal agreement, we will soon be able to move to another, more positive step in the Brexit process. The scope of the withdrawal agreement, as well as the ambition on the future relations with the UK, imply that we will have to remain vigilant as regards first and foremost the preservation of citizens' rights, be it during the transition period or under whatever future relationship with the United Kingdom. But our vigilance will have to be no less thorough when considering the intended economic partnership, where strong safeguards and robust governance will be called for to protect the integrity of the EU single market and the competitive position of EU firms. We will therefore count on your cooperation in this respect as well. Although we are sincerely sad to see a member state leaving, the European Union and the United Kingdom share a long history together, and this should truly be a new start point for building a close relationship in the future, based on mutual respect and equality. Thank you very much once again for your attention.
Grazie, la discussione.
Thank you very much. This winds up the debate. We will now proceed to the vote on this. The explanations of votes will be taken tomorrow after the votes tomorrow. Are you ready? The Verhofstadt report. Roll call vote. The vote is open. The vote is closed. (683) have cast their votes, 621 in favour, 49 against, 13 abstentions.
Commovente. Sì. Onorevoli colleghi, colleghe e colleghi.
Ladies and gentlemen, the European Parliament has voted. It has given its consent with an overwhelming majority to the withdrawal agreement, and now it is Council tomorrow that has to give its final approval in order to wrap up the necessary formalities so that the UK can withdraw from the EU on midnight on Friday the 31st of January. Before I sign the official act, I'd like to take advantage of this opportunity to share some thoughts with you. Of course, we're all deeply saddened by the thought that we have come to this point in time and that a country that has been a partner for a long time and a member of the EU has decided to leave the EU family. I remember how disconcerted we all felt when, back in June 2016, we heard the news that the UK had decided to leave the European Union. Of course, we have always fully respected the decision of the people of the UK and their will to build a different future, a future outside the European Union. On behalf of the European Parliament, I'd like to say to those colleagues who will be leaving us, because this is their last plenary sitting, that we are very grateful. And I'd like to say that we truly appreciate all the work that you have done over the last few years. Now, friends from the UK, your being here has only made the EU richer, and I'd like to say to you, your colleagues and allies, and we will have strong ties with the UK. We have worked side by side and stood shoulder to shoulder here in the European Parliament. 50 years of integration cannot disappear easily. I think that we all have to work hard to build new relationships and to make sure that protecting interests of European citizens is at the heart of what we do. But we will also have to be aware that there will be difficult moments ahead of us. But I feel confident that we will overcome these difficulties and will be able to find common ground. You're leaving the European Union, but of course you will still be part of Europe. There are values that bring us together, and make us stronger. So it is very hard to say goodbye. It is too final. And that is why, like other colleagues, I say arrivederci. And I want to use the words of Joe Cox, the British MP who was killed during an electoral campaign. We have a lot more in common than what divides us. Thank you. And now I will sign the letter that will send the European Parliament's consent to the Council. This is the European Parliament's consent on the withdrawal agreement of the United Kingdom of Great Britain and Northern Ireland from the European Union and the EEAEC.
Grazie per la vostra collaborazione.
Thank you very much.
Die Sitzung ist wieder eröffnet.
We resume the session. Following this emotional moment, I understand that colleagues are discussing quite a lot. Nevertheless, I would beg your indulgence because we do have other debates and there are people who would like to take the floor. So could I just ask you in the corridors to move quickly outside the chamber? You can hug each other much better in the lobby, I think.
S'il vous plaît. Als nächster Punkt der Tagesordnung.
The next item on our agenda is a statement by the Commission and the Council concerning the outbreak of the coronavirus. Maybe I could just recall that spontaneous requests for the floor under Catch the Eye can be made electronically or manually, as per usual. Ms. Hohlmeier, could you maybe just take those colleagues with you outside?
Die Aussprache beginnt.
Our debate will start on behalf of the Council Presidency. Ms. Brignac.
Thank you. President, honourable members, I wish to start by thanking you for inviting me to update you on the potentially very serious threat to the public health that could result from the ongoing outbreak of acute respiratory syndrome in the Chinese city of Wuhan. It is caused by a novel coronavirus, and there are already thousands of cases and more than 100 people have died. This is a place where hundreds of EU citizens live and work, and I will come back to that later. But let me first give a few details about this disease outbreak. The Presidency takes this issue very seriously. We monitor the situation in close cooperation with Member States, authorities and EU institutions, bodies and agencies, and with international organisations such as the World Health Organization. The first cases were reported on the 31st of December in 2019. Already on 9th of January, the Chinese authorities reported that the outbreak was caused by a novel coronavirus. It is genetically closely related to the virus that caused more than 8,000 cases of severe acute respiratory syndrome, better known as SARS. First, I'd like to state that the available data about the virus, transmissibility and fatality rate should be treated with caution, as the situation is still evolving. What we know is that the virus causes a potentially very dangerous illness, as the mortality of the 2019 virus seems to be lower than the SARS, but it is still very high, about 3% of the cases varying with age, and the incubation period during which any infected persons can infect others seems to be longer. It is therefore potentially a serious threat. As I speak, over 6,000 cases of coronavirus infections have been confirmed in China and Southeast Asia, and regrettably, 132 persons have died. So far, to our best knowledge, no EU citizen currently in China has been infected, but some isolated cases have been reported in Europe. In the beginning, victims seemed to have been infected by animals, but in recent days, first the Chinese and then the German authorities have confirmed human-to-human transmission to the virus. This increases the potential of the virus to infect a large number of people. As you know, the Commission has the possibility and duty to assist Member States, in particular in cases of cross-border health threats, and Member States' competent authorities follow the developments very closely. The Health Security Committee, which deals with serious cross-border threats to health and which involves all Member States and the Commission, has already met 3 times to exchange information about the outbreak and will of course be involved in further coordination of responsibilities to this health threat. As you know, we also have a specialised European agency active in this field, the European Centre for Disease Prevention and Control. It now provides, on an almost daily basis, updates about the situation. I dare therefore say that as regards the threat to public health in Europe, we have sufficient expertise available to handle the situation. Furthermore, Member States' authorities are very vigilant to further developments, and as long as there is adherence with appropriate prevention and control practices, there is a low likelihood that secondary cases will occur in the European Union. If, however, a person infected outside Europe would be discovered late, the risk of secondary transmission would be high, so we need to remain vigilant. Let me now further outline what we have undertaken so far. On Monday, we very swiftly activated the EU's integrated political crisis response mechanism for enhanced information sharing among Member States, the Commission and the European External Action Service. This mechanism brings together, under the steer of the Council Presidency, all relevant experts from the Member States and the European Union institutions, such as in fields of health, consular affairs and civil protection. It is an effective tool to support the collective horizontal response, covering both the European Union internal and external dimension of the situation. The objective at this stage is to facilitate information sharing across relevant sectors based on expert input from all EU services, so as to gain a common understanding of the situation and the latest developments. As regards the need for repatriation of the EU citizens, it should be noted that consular affairs fall under Member States' competence, but of course also here we have means for cooperation. We also called on Monday a telephone conference among the Member States. Through these coordinations and facilitation efforts, we are giving Member States the opportunity to update and support each other on their repatriation plans. Close cooperation within the Council structures and preparatory bodies will enable us to reach effectively and in an appropriate manner whatever way the situation develops. We have taken this step proactively to ensure we are prepared. We are looking forward to hearing from the Commission about their work, which is closely linked to our efforts, for example, as regards the activation of the Union Civil Protection Mechanism, which has been requested by several Member States. Thank you very much for your attention.
Thank you very much, Minister Brynjac. Now, on behalf of the Commission, Commissioner Kyriakides.
Honourable members, I'm very grateful to have this opportunity to inform you about the EU's preparedness and response to the developing situation of the coronavirus, which was first reported in China 1 month ago. Last reports from this morning indicate just over 6,000 laboratory-confirmed cases and 132 deaths. All the deaths have occurred in China. The situation is evolving very rapidly and has potentially serious public health implications. We have seen that the World Health Organization is again convening the International Health Regulations Emergency Committee on the situation tomorrow to advise on whether the current outbreak constitutes a public health emergency of international concern. We will follow these discussions very closely. My priority as Commissioner in charge of health is to make sure that we, as the Commission, provide all the support to Member States. This means that the Commission is monitoring the situation very closely and has taken action to support national measures and coordinate the response of Member States. This takes place via the EU's early warning and response system, where information is exchanged in real time, as well as discussions with Member States in the Health Security Committee, which has met 3 times. I'm also in regular contact with the Director General of the World Health Organization and its regional director in Europe to coordinate next steps at a global level. This ensures essential and immediate information exchange and a coordinated Europe-wide response, which is, of course, the Commission's primary responsibility. Ladies and gentlemen, the vast majority of cases have been identified in China, but last week, cases have also been confirmed in other parts of the world, including Europe. At the moment, we have 4 confirmed cases in France, 4 confirmed cases in Germany, and we also have information that a case has just been confirmed in Finland. I am in continuous contact with the French, Italian, German and Croatian health ministers, and I am assured that the necessary steps to contain the virus have been taken. On Monday, the EU's Health Security Committee met to discuss preparedness and needs of member states and response options on the basis of the updated risk assessment from the European Centre for Disease Prevention and Control. I have been reassured that the vast majority of European countries reported a high level of preparedness to face the coronavirus in Europe, including access to laboratory diagnosis networks, readiness for clinical diagnosis and management of cases, guidance for travellers, capacities and guidance for management of points of entry, and guidance for healthcare professionals and the public on how to deal with suspected cases. An important topic is the repatriation of EU citizens from China, Hubei region, more precisely where the epidemic is concentrated. On Tuesday, France activated the EU Civil Protection Mechanism. We hope that as soon as possible, EU citizens will be able to come back to Europe. The details are being coordinated as we speak, and the EU Emergency Response Centre is supporting the efforts of member states. There remain at the moment important uncertainties. The coronavirus, such as its origins, its transmission mode and its pathogenicity. So we need to continue to monitor this situation very closely. It's clear that rapid communication, sharing of information and close cooperation are paramount to tackle this outbreak effectively. If the situation deteriorates, we will consider all other tools to strengthen our support to member states. And this would include emergency funding to support outbreak response and, of course, research, where our supercomputer centres stand ready to sequence and simulate the evolution of the virus, which can help researchers develop a vaccine. For the time being, we will continue to offer all our support. Should the EU Council presidency decide, we would support a decision to organise an extraordinary health council, but I understand this is not imminent. We will update you, of course, as the situation evolves. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Commissioner Kyriakides. Now for 2 minutes, Mr. Liese.
Thank you, President. Dear colleagues, we need to take this very seriously. I understand that many are concerned. The case that was confirmed yesterday in Germany was contracted within Germany, within the EU. So not just so-called imported cases of people from China, but there's also been transmission within the European Union. That changes the situation. We therefore take it very seriously and we will be paying close attention. At the same time, I am with those who say, let's not stir up panic. There are other health risks, such as normal influenza. This kills far more people in Europe at the current time than the new coronavirus. One thing is clear, when faced with such dangers, such as the one caused by the new coronavirus, we must have European cooperation. It's good that the European member states have been informing each other very swiftly. They're not sitting on the information. I think it would be good if the recommendations were uniform and the same. So imagine if you live on the border between Belgium, the Netherlands and Germany, you shouldn't have different instructions being given to different airports. We should tackle this together because viruses know no borders. Also important for me is that we launch an appeal to China. There is a lot of mistrust in Europe, but also among the Chinese people, about whether the Chinese authorities have told the whole truth and whether they have transmitted information quickly enough. I can't judge. Unfortunately, the doctrine in China seems to be that transparency isn't of the uppermost importance, and that it shouldn't be like that. We should call on China to tell the whole truth so that we can react. There's no point in hushing this up. Thank you very much, Mr. Liga. Now for 1.5 minutes, Ms. Gutteland.
Herr talman.
President, Madam Commissioner in charge of Health, Presidency. First of all, I'd like to say that I have sympathy with those who are suffering from this virus and the families who are extremely concerned about their nearest and dearest. And of course, it's extremely urgent that we take this as an important issue. We've seen some very early signals from China and information, so we have the preconditions to prepare ourselves for what might be coming our way. I'm very pleased then that we're having this debate today, and a great deal of what we've heard from the Presidency and the Commissioner is something I'm very pleased to hear. But I would encourage that we draw on best practices so that the EU is well prepared in the best fashion, and that we have the best level of cooperation at global level to stop the spread of this virus. There's still a lack of clarity, and we've heard this in the discussion, as to how this transmission takes place. It's very important that we have ongoing updates and that we're completely open with regards to the information that can help us. We have to be vigilant, and we have to understand as well that we have experience we can draw on from previous viruses, such as SARS, which we saw spreading at the start of 2000s. So there is a lot of experience we can draw on. We need to be extra vigilant at the moment, but to prepare ourselves for the best in the best way, we need to make sure that we cooperate and are prepared, and in doing so we can prevent the spreading of this virus should impact too harshly on Europe.
Thank you very much, Ms. Gutteland. I just want to say to those who are present that we have a small technical problem. Those who want to take the floor as part of Catch the Eye, tell me again if you said that or informed me electronically. For 1 minute, Ms. Trier-Lenoir.
Thank you very much, President. President, Madam Health Commissioner, this new virus shouldn't create panic. It should make us cautious, given that there's a lot of uncertainty surrounding this. It shows us that health threats are now global health threats, and it means that we have to act together. No, viruses know no borders, and we have to thrash out solutions across Europe. And that is why I would like to welcome the action taken in the EU and triggering the civil action process in order to repatriate people from my country and others, and of course the role of the ECDC. As a doctor, I would like to say that the influenza claimed the lives of 13,000 people in France last year. So we mustn't forget that there is prevention, there is vaccination, and we have to fight against those who might be reluctant to go for this. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Trier-Lenoir. For 1 minute, Ms. Rivasi. Thank you, President. Thank you, Honourable Commissioner. As you've stated, there are many uncertainties surrounding the coronavirus. Already, we don't know how many people have been contaminated. The Chinese say 6,000 people have been affected. The University of Hong Kong says 40,000. So, contagion. Is this virus more contagious than others? It doesn't seem to be the case. Is it more deadly than other viruses? It doesn't seem to kill more people than influenza. Will it mutate more than others? It doesn't seem to be the case at the current time either. I therefore agree with my colleague. Let's not stir up panic. And let's not stigmatize the Asian and Chinese communities. As you've said, we really need to look at research and we need to have cooperation between the states. We also need to ensure that information trickles down to the people. We mustn't give in to irrational panic. Let's remember that in France there are 600 to 700 people. Thank you very much for that. Now we have for 1 minute Ms. Sardone.
The coronavirus is something serious. 6,000 people have it. That's more than was the case with SARS, and it is now in Europe too. So now you wanted a cordon sanitaire against ID and R groups, and now that we need a cordon sanitaire, we're not united and we're lagging behind. Some countries are repatriating their fellow countrymen, others are not. British Airways cancelled flights, others are not. Some countries have stopped people from coming back, others have not. And we're also lagging behind. Why is this? Because we have to work together with the WHO, which only said that there is a heightened risk now. So we have to try and find a vaccine as quickly as possible. And finally, it is